Hey everyone, welcome back to Pine Hollow out of Diagnostics. Today in the shop we have a Kia Forte 2011 with no ground clearance and no suspension travel. Look at this thing. How is the front lip still on the vehicle? Anyways, what's the customer complaint? He says that when he revs it above 4,000 RPM, when he's really boosting it, the thing goes into limp mode, check engine light comes on, and a P0335 or 336 code comes up that has to do with the crankshaft position sensor. Okay, so he's done a lot of stuff. Let's read the customer complaint and see if we can diagnose this thing without tearing off any plastic, because we're in the country and there's some potholes around. Alright, let's read the customer complaint. Kia Forte misfire issue and how to replicate. Car misfires when free revving in neutral. Misfires when driving hard, especially after shifting fast. As soon as you put it in the next gear and get back in the throttle, it misfires almost every time. It also misfires when there's a large difference in throttle input. Cruising at 1500 RPM in second gear and then mashing the throttle will make the car buck like crazy. For example, when misfiring, the RPM noticeably drops, it picks right back up. Triggers the 335 code. Also have gotten a 336, but less often. Regularly puts the car in a 3K RPM limp mode, which is exactly how the car runs if the crank sensor is unplugged. Limp mode happens about 2 minutes into the drive, just about every single time I drive the car. The issue has gotten worse over time. New parts tried, 115,000 miles, spark plugs, crank sensor not OEM, map sensor not OEM, ignition coils. Both cam sensors replaced OEM, crank sensor replaced OEM. Tried a secondary OEM ECU from the exact same model. Looked at waveforms, the crank sensor using Oscilloscope, nothing stood out, but I'm definitely an amateur. Tested tons of connections with multimeter for anything out of the expected range. Previous owner also must have had issues. There was aftermarket wiring from the crank sensor harness power wired to the positive battery terminal. I bought the car at 84,000 miles. I've done some shoddy wiring with the ground after chasing a strange voltage issue in the crank sensor, 7 volts and ground ignition on. I've also since wired in a new crank sensor connector and spliced it to the wiring right at the ECU, and the issue still persisted. I recently removed the valve cover and checked for excess slack on the timing chain and felt within spec. I've never heard of any rattle or ticking noise, blah blah blah. Okay. Things I have not tried: inspecting tone wheel, chain tensioner, blah blah blah, his fuse box. Worth mentioning, issues started well before the test pipe, intake cone, filter, and rear aftermarket muffler were installed. I heavily doubt, as the car was 100% stock at the time the problem started. Well, it's not stock anymore. I'm looking for the problem to be fully diagnosed and potentially fixed with concrete definitive proof of the issue's cause. I'm dealing with this for far too long. I want my car to drive normally again. Here, you guys are absolute top-notch. Only a few hours for me. Looking forward to hearing back. Thank you. Alright, this should be fun. So, let's do a pre-scan, take a peek under the hood, see what this aftermarket wiring is all about, and then we're going right to the PicoScope, looking at cam and crank waveforms, and taking this thing for a test drive, see if we notice any glitches. Alright, so the pre-scan shows indeed P0336, crankshaft position sensor A circuit range performance, and O2 sensor circuit no activity detected, bank 1 sensor 2. Probably because it doesn't have cats anymore, so not worried about that code. Let's take a peek under the hood. Alright, here we go. Let's see what's going on. Oh, we see white wires, butt connectors, splices. So we have power, ground, signal probably. I mean, this is nice and tight. You can play like a guitar string. Okay. What else do we have here? This is the original connector, looks like. It goes down there. That's the crank sensor wire. Looks like it goes down there. Okay. Where are the cam sensors? There's one here and one right here. Okay. So we can do all our measurements in this area. Fun times. yeah, let's just hook up the PicoScope and take this thing for a rip. Oh, it's a 2.4, so let's check the engine oil. It's actually full. Amazing. Make sure he has coolant. Let's make sure we have coolant. Might be a little low, but not terrible. Alright. Alright, so let's start with 3 channels on the Pico. Channel 1 is going to be crankshaft position sensor signal. Channel 2, crankshaft position sensor ground, which goes to the PCM. Not worried about the power. And then channel 3 is the signal on the intake camshaft position. So let's load up the Pico and take this thing for a test drive. Alright, here we go. 3 channels. So the red channel I put on a 2-volt scale because we're just measuring the sensor ground. Let's fire it up. Okay, let me erase the trouble codes, and that way when the problem happens we'll know right away. Let's take a look at the first capture here. So it's idling, and then I revved it up in 2 places. So you can see the engine speed increases. This is the camshaft position sensor. What happens to our crank sensor? Well, is this normal? They're not really square pulses. They're like getting lower and becoming a sawtooth. Nothing wrong with our ground. Then it goes back up to this. Okay, so maybe a little rounded. We can measure the RPMs. So 2 crank revolutions. Well, we can just measure crank to crank. That's about 4,000 RPM right there on this rev. I don't see any missing teeth. There was a spike right here. Wonder what that is. Is that an ignition spike? There are a couple. Like there's, like if that interferes, then it wouldn't be good. What we can do, oh, what's this? Is that a double pulse? I think that's our problem right there. Check that out. How about that? Oh, there's another problem. For sure, he has a problem with his signal. So instead of teeth, you get this big step in between the sync notches. And there's a nice spike right there. Now, is that correlated? There's another spike right here. Did you guys see that? Very cool. Alright, so this is a great capture. We don't even need to test drive this car, and I really don't want to because the roads here, around here are a little rough. But let's, if this is an ignition spike right here, so it happened there, it happened right there, so it looks pretty repeatable. Let me save this capture, and then we'll have to sync this up with an ignition coil. That should be pretty easy to do. And if it's just one coil causing this issue, it shouldn't be that hard to pinpoint. Now, I don't know if he put in OEM coils or not. Probably not. But we're on the right track. Alright, so I want to sync up with one of the ignition coils. This is the closest one. I'm using an amp clamp because I don't want to have the bad ignition coil spike my oscilloscope. So this is a non-intrusive way to just measure the current going through one coil. I don't know which way it's going. Doesn't really matter as long as the current clamp picks it up. So let's set that up on channel 4. And I'm going to actually increase the sample rate to 2 million samples per screen. And we're going to do plus or minus 5 volts on channel 3. That's the yellow channel. So that's going to be our sink for the ignition coil. Let's see what happens. Alright, let's pause it. Let's see if we have any missing. Yep, we sure do. Like right there was an event. And our yellow channel is going to show us where coil number 4 is. And look at that. There was a gap in the firing after this event occurred. Right there. Boom, boom. So that definitely triggered a fault. So let's try to find a missing gap here. So I revved it twice. There's one. So it's occurring right after this notch. It's also occurring right there. So pretty repetitive. Also occurring right there. Alright, let me analyze the data here, see if we can draw any conclusions. Alright, so what I'm seeing is that spike is usually occurring right after our sync pulse, coil number 4, and I'm using rulers. So this is going to be cylinder number 4, then whatever the firing order is, 2, 1, 3, 4. We'll double check that, but it's always occurring on the event after our sync. There's one there. There's one right here. That was a big one, right in that falling edge of the cam pulse. And right from there, the spark gets messed up. No wonder the owner's feeling loss of power and misfires. That's not surprising. Let's see if we can find another one here. Right on the rev. We should never lose spark. But right there, boom. Computer doesn't know what to do with that. So this fault occurred on the rising edge of the cam pulse. So we can actually use the cam pulse as a really good ruler of when the faults are occurring. So this one is on the rising edge of the cam pulse. This one, well, let's see right here. This one's on the falling edge of the cam pulse. So we have fire, 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 fire. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So on every edge of the cam pulse and in between we have an event. Okay? That one happened right there. So that's 2 notches after our sync. So it could be that all these ignition coils are junk, but at least, at least 2 of them are. And we know this is an ignition problem. So I'm going to ask the owner what kind of spark plugs and coils he installed, or where did he buy them. And we're going to have to replace them all with OE parts, or at least Denso, or I'm actually Not recommending NGK coils at the moment. The spark plugs are great. Coils, I have seen NGK coils actually, case study coming up, where, well, you'll see, not recommended. So I think this is enough data. Let's just pop out a spark plug maybe, see what the firing order is. I think we're almost done with this cart. Alright, so I took out number 4 coil and plug. So the plug actually looks to be, at least to my untrained eye, NGK iridium. It seems to be genuine. It's hard to say. It says assembled in USA. But still, if it was bought on Amazon or eBay, I would not trust it. The thing I don't trust are these coils. They look like the cheapest thing you could buy on eBay, which, no name brand garbage. So it's getting at least 4 high quality coils, and I'm going to ask the owner where he bought the spark plugs. We're going to start with that. I don't know if he wants me to fix all this aftermarket wiring garbage, but we have to get the car running right, and then once we do, we'll fix all this up. There's no point in redoing the wiring if it's still going to run crappy. So I'm going to give him an estimate, and we'll be back with the repairs. Alright, back to the 2011 Kia Forte. We have some brand new Denso ignition coils from Rock Auto. So I'm going to pop those in, and the customer also approved the repair of this mess. So we're going to restore the factory wiring harness for the crankshaft position sensor and do another scope measurement with the new coils. Make sure that CKP sensor signal is perfect. What's nice that these coils are super accessible. Just undo these locks, unplug all the coils, and buzz them out. We could label them just 1, 2, 3, 4. I always like to do that when I'm returning old bad parts to the customer, so. Alright, let's put the new ones in. New coils are ironically made in Korea, so they should work well with this Hyundai Kia product. Alright, let me finish that up, and then we'll get to fixing up this mess. So the new Denso ignition coils are in. Now let's take care of the crankshaft position sensor wiring mess. So let me verify powers and grounds to this original connector first. So you see what they did here was they just cut the wires at the PCM connector. Then they stretch these two out, and then the power source is direct battery feed, which is obviously not correct. So test light from battery ground. Let me make sure that the original power feed here is good. That would be the red wire, pin 1, red and black wire. So if I touch that pin, test light should light up. It does, so we have a good power feed. The ground is a yellow on pin 2, but there won't be a ground here because it's cut, so we need to check at the PCM. So from battery positive now, if it finds a ground, it'll light up. And let me find that yellow wire. It must be this one. Yep. So that's the ground wire. So we're gonna have to take this apart, take the cover off, resolder this, and then restore this original connector and plug it into the CKP. So that's going to take a little while, but maybe I'll show you some of the soldering. So it is quite satisfying restoring vehicles to stock after hack jobs. So hopefully these wires are long enough to where we can just solder these wires together without any extensions, but we'll see as they cut these kind of short. Let's see here. It's 18 gauge, so we'll go like this. Strip that off. And like this. Strip that off. Yep, those should reach with some shrink wrap. I think they'll be good to go. We'll take all this garbage off. And then down here, I removed most of the aftermarket wiring. There is one red wire spliced into the power feed. I don't know if they cut the solder. I'm going to unsolder it and fix this up. So 1, 2, 3, 4 solder joints, and we should be good to go once we plug in the original connector. Alright, so I'll just do one joint to demonstrate. So I have a long piece of shrink wrap on here, and then a little clip holding the wires together. Heat up our TS100 soldering iron to 400 degrees C, and just gently heat up this joint. Like so, and we're done. Take off the clip, slide on the shrink wrap, and I'll toast both of those on once they're well, we can do it right now since the other one's kind of far away. Just nice and gentle, make sure it seals up. Now this is not a wet area, so we still want to do a nice job. You see the epoxy's sealed up. And we'll do the same with the second wire, and then we'll move on to soldering these two connections at the actual sensor connector. So we're all done up here by the PCM connector. We'll slide the cover back on. Like so, perfect, clips right in. And plug this sucker back in. I guess we could have done a little better job on the tape. So it slides off very easily. So I guess we could give it a couple of wraps of tape and then slide the cover on. Got some Scotch Super 33, best electrical tape on the market. So that's nice and taped up. Now we can slide this sucker back in like so. That looks like professional grade right there. Now we can plug this sucker in. Nice and easy. Perfect. Plug this one back in. Perfect. So we're done at the PCM end. Look at this stupid thing. This does not improve performance, people. Just leave this factory airbox already. 2 more joints to do. Alrighty, so the Kia is back to stock. 4 new ignition coils. All of the CKP sensor wiring is repaired. So 2 solder joints there. Now I want to hook up the PICO, just 2 channels, CKP sensor signal, and a trigger on the ignition coil number 4 with the amp clamp. Let's rev it up and make sure the CKP doesn't drop out or have any glitches. Alright, so this is our capture from last time. We're going to simplify it. We don't need this camshaft or the CKP ground anymore. So let's run it. And we're going to turn off the middle 2 channels. Okay, so we just have CKP and ignition coil 4 sync. Let's fire it up. Okay. think we're in good shape. Let's take a peek. When we revved it up, make sure the ignition spikes are not dropping out, and our CKP looks fantastic. So there was a little glitch right there, but there are no missing teeth anymore at all. Let's see what happened right here. Just a little interference. So I wouldn't worry about that. Let's take it for a test drive, make sure it doesn't set any codes. We'll save this as an after waveform. And by the way, all of the waveforms that I show are, I upload to Google Drive, and there's a link in the description so you can download the PICO software for free and follow along with, actually looking at the waveforms. It doesn't cost anything, and you'll learn a lot. Even if you don't have a scope yet, just using the program and looking at waveforms is a huge help. And once you get the scope, you'll be ahead of the game. Let's take the Kia for a test drive and try not to ding any rims or hit any potholes here. Just making sure that we have no codes to begin with, no fault code. Just look at some basic data while we're test driving, and that should be it. Alright, let's give it the beans. Oh geez. Even these little bumps in the road cause this thing to bottom out, so I think we're good. So what did we learn? Junk aftermarket parts strike again, especially when they're electrical. Don't go aftermarket, people, because that caused the owner to chase his tail for like 2 years and hack up the wiring and all that nonsense. So quality ignition coils from Denso, and restoring the factory wiring to that crankshaft position sensor to fix this car. Well, I mean, I wouldn't drive it, but I guess the owner will be happy. So thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. After the test drive, no fault code stored, and we'll give the owner a present. This little bag of garbage, all the ignition coils, aftermarket wires, you can keep that.